I get it, you're standing in the parking lot, hands on the wheel, and you're wondering if splurging on a subwoofer system will actually make a difference or just end up as a noisy add-on you'll never use. You've probably heard the hype about deep, booming bass and thought, maybe I'll get one and see what happens, but you also don't want to waste money on something that won't mesh with your car's setup. That hesitation is real, especially when you have to think about power draw, wiring, and whether your head unit can actually drive a serious low-frequency rig. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Alpine bundle we're talking about today pairs two W10D2 10-inch R-series subwoofers with the R2 A150M mono amplifier. It's the kind of package that promises you a full range, chest-rattling experience without having to hunt down each component separately. The idea is simple: you get a high-power amp that's already matched to the subs, so you don't have to guess whether a 500-watt amp will push a 300-watt sub to its limits. That matching can be a lifesaver for anyone who's ever tried to pair a generic amp with a sub and ended up with either distortion or barely audible bass. So who actually benefits from this combo? If you spend a lot of time in your car listening to music the way it was meant to be heard, whether you're a fan of hip-hop, EDM, or even just love the low rumble of a good movie soundtrack, this bundle gives you the tools to feel the music, not just hear it. The 10-inch drivers are equipped with larger magnets and a hybrid dust cap design, which in plain English means they can move more air and produce a tighter, more controlled low end. That's the difference between a boom that sounds like a vague rumble and a bass that you can actually feel in your seat. If you've already upgraded your head unit or have a factory system that's struggling to keep up with modern playlists, the R2 A150M's 1500-watt Class D power output is generous enough to give those subs the juice they need. The top-mounted controls are a practical touch. You can dial in gain, low-pass filter, and phase right from the amp without having to reach behind the dash or pull out a laptop. Thermal management is also built in, which helps keep the amp from overheating on those long highway stretches where you might be cranking the volume for hours. Now, let's talk about the practical side of installation. The subwoofers are 10-inch, which makes them a bit more forgiving in terms of enclosure space compared to 12-inch units that often require a custom box. In many sedans and compact SUVs you can tuck them under a seat or behind a console, and the hybrid dust cap helps keep them from getting rattly even if the mounting isn't perfectly rigid. The amp, on the other hand, sits nicely in the trunk or under a seat, and because it's a mono design you only have to run a single set of power and ground cables, plus the speaker wire to the two subs. That simplifies the wiring job considerably, but you still need a solid power connection. Alpine recommends at least a 12-gauge power cable for this power level. If your vehicle's stock battery and alternator are modest, you may find yourself needing a secondary battery or a more robust alternator to sustain the amp under heavy bass loads. A hidden trade-off that isn't advertised in the spec sheet is the need for proper tuning. The amp's adjustable crossover is a strength, but if you set the low pass too high you'll end up with muddy mids, set it too low and you'll miss out on that punchy thump you're after. In my testing, spending a few minutes with a simple sine wave generator or a familiar bass-heavy track helped lock the crossover around 80 Hz for most genres, and that gave a clean, tight low end without overwhelming the rest of the audio spectrum. The gain knob also requires a gentle hand. Cranking it too far will clip the signal and produce harsh distortion that can actually damage the sub's voice coil over time. One practical weakness to keep in mind is that the amp's power is more than enough for the subs, but it also means you need to be mindful of the total draw on your vehicle's electrical system. If you're the type who only uses the sub for occasional bass boost when you're pulling into a driveway, the extra,